documenting the front lines of the AI revolution, the AI Rebels podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. We're very excited to have Professor David Wood here from Brigham Young University out in Provo, Utah, my alma mater, and actually one of my professors I had when I was there in the accounting program. And he's a big name in information systems, the tech space. I had him for a class where we touched on RPA, robotic process automation. So he's kind of always been a big mind in my head for tech and AI. So I'm very excited to have you on, Professor Wood. Thanks for coming on.
Well, Jacob, it was fun having you in class, but I didn't teach you enough because you can't look through the hubris and see that I'm just a simple person.
I know, but it's great. Professor, I'm going to keep calling you Professor Wood, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've done so much in the space. Can you give us a high level of what has brought you to this point?
Yeah, so I came to BYU as an undergrad and was just interested, not sure what I want to do, sciences, technology, accounting. Took a couple accounting classes, really enjoyed them, so I went down that path. Went out and did my PhD at Indiana, and then they hired me back. All along the way, traditional accounting was fine, but I always kept gravitating back to technology. Oh, can I do that better? Can I do it faster? Can I do it differently? And a number of years ago, the data analytics thing came on big data and data analytics. And so I got big into that movement of, okay, let's understand this. Let's start teaching it to our students. And once I started down that path, I realized I'm a technologist at heart. I love playing with new tech, just to explore what's possible. I love the possibilities of technology. So my research, my teaching have all moved that way. And then generative AI came out, and that opened up a whole ton of unique and fun doors. So that's been the latest kind of today. I've been here 17 years, I think, at BYU. So it's been a good run so far.
That's amazing. Do you remember the first time you used ChatGPT when
Yeah.
it kind of
Yeah.
launched
So
this?
it came out late November 2022. Is that right? And about a week or two later, a colleague in the hall stopped me and said, "Have you heard about this chat GPT?" And I'm like, "No, tell me." And they start kind of explaining. So just go back to your office and try it. So I
Hmm.
went back, I pulled it open, and it was like the first time I heard the sound of the internet. You're too young to remember when it went do do do. But it was like that. I typed something. I don't even remember what I typed, but tell me the answer to something, and it spits out this answer. And I do a couple of those, and I said, "This is cool. I
Yeah.
wonder how good it is at accounting." I'm a nerd, so.
Yeah. You're like, let's get
But
serious.
yeah, so well, I pulled
What
up
can
an
it do with
exam,
numbers?
and well, I pulled up an exam, and I was thinking, I wonder what students are going to do. And I put in an exam question, and it got it right. And I put
Oh
in
my
another
goodness.
one, and it got it right. And then it got the third one wrong, and I said, "This is cool." So I actually started a research project that day,
Oh my gosh.
and just wanted to start exploring what can this tech actually do. So that research project is kind of a fun one. I've always wanted to do a crowdsourced research project. And
Mhm.
so I put out on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, there's this new technology. Any professor will put their exam questions in. Let's see how good it is." And we had
Hmm.
over 300 faculty from across the world put in over 25,000 questions.
Wow.
And it was crazy how fast the project went. Academic accounting research is usually really slow, but we got the whole thing accepted. The day it was accepted, ChatGPT 4 came out. And the findings of
Oh,
the original study are, no, this isn't very good. Don't worry about it. And it went wild in media. And then the day it got accepted, 4 came out, and we redid the study with professional certification exams, not just exams in my
Hmm.
class, and it passed all of them. So it went
oh
from
my gosh.
no,
Wow.
AI is no problem to, oh no, now it can be a CPA, a CIA, a CMA, etc.
Oh my
That
goodness.
fast.
That's
That's
insane.
wild. Especially, did that affect your study at all? Did you have to, did you do?
Thankfully, no, this one went through fast, and so it got
Okay.
accepted, and then we did a follow-up paper. And so I actually got 2 papers for the price of one, I guess.
I'd be
But
curious,
that's
did the follow-up paper receive as much attention as the first paper?
no. The first paper, I think everybody really wanted AI not to win, and so they were really
Hmm.
happy to say,
Hmm.
"See, everything's okay. Don't worry about anything." The second paper got attention, but not nearly as much.
Hmm.
And and that's kind of funny. I think there's a lot of people who have strong feelings about AI. Either this is awesome, it's the future, or kind of I want to ignore that this exists and hopefully it will go away.
Yeah, I think that's still a challenge we're seeing is this lingering, almost denial. People
Yeah.
living in denial that that it's here to stay. It's not gonna go anywhere, and it's
Yep.
changing industries. It's changing the world. Like you said, it's a licensed CPA at this point. It's a licensed lawyer at this point. It
Well,
can,
Does half my coding for me. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
I think when you first see it, there's a reaction of, whoa, that's kind of interesting, cool. It's almost like magic. How does it make that funny poem or whatever you put in the first time? Then you start thinking, oh, what are the implications of this?
hmm
And a lot of people get scared at that point saying, oh no, I'm going to lose my job. It can do everything. And it can't. I mean, we can set some of those fears aside, but I think that sinks in. And rather than confront it and get through that fear of saying, okay, so what does this mean? I think a lot of people just say, okay, no, let's just put the genie back in the box and pretend it doesn't
hmm
exist, which is exactly the wrong approach
right.
because it's not going anywhere. It's just coming on stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, totally.
It's amazed me just how much more capable each model is, and it's starting to eat into like the little marginal gains that I thought were going to be really, really hard for it to get, right? Um, but it just continues to amaze me. I mean, little things like ChatGPT 4 like could not write very good poetry. It didn't know how to do slant rhymes, etc. I did a lot of experiments with this because I thought it was a really interesting exploration of like, what are the capabilities of this, both from a technical perspective and a creative perspective. Um, and then ChatGPT 4.0, way better, shockingly good when prompted correctly, and it's just going to keep continuing that way. And I think that yeah, to your point, like people need to be aware of this, and that's a big reason why Jake and I bring people like you on to bring more, bring more awareness to the space. Um, I'd be curious. So with your work on exploring the accounting capabilities of language models, have you since tested other language models? So, for example, have you like run Claude through the
Mhm.
same paces?
Yeah, so we focused on ChatGPT first. It
Hmm.
came out first and was what everyone was talking about. I now play with, I have both ChatGPT and Claude. I like them both for different reasons. And I think
Hmm.
that's what I'm starting to see a specialization. But we've done research on the mini models, on the full size models. We've
Okay.
started playing with Llama, Copilot, Gemini. I mean, they each have a different personality. I don't know if that's the
Hmm.
right word to describe it,
hmm
but they all act a little bit differently. And as I play with them, you start to see, okay, this one's better for this task. I like this one for this task. And even more than the underlying model is the cool features they're putting on top. So with
Right.
Claude, that you can program and have it create, these widgets and see your programming work live. That's been awesome for making things for the classroom, just quick demos. And then Canvas comes out on ChatGPT, and how cool that is to be able to real time edit and just change little words and rewrite this paragraph and that sort of thing. So I think the features are starting to come to the forefront, not just the model, but how do you use these features to actually be productive and
hmm
accomplish real tasks?
Hmm.
Totally agree. Yeah, like the user interface
Mhm.
is now being developed. They built this big engine. And they're like, okay, let's figure out how to let the user actually access everything it can do.
Well,
Um,
and I think that's really got what got me into thinking, well, should I step outside of academia to start thinking about a business proposition?
mhm.
Because now we have this tool, and how do we apply it for good? And where could we improve things going on? And it started for me with education, thinking, how could one of the initial reaction of a lot of faculty was, let's just ban it. This is bad. It's
Hmm.
like Chegg,
Yeah.
people are going to cheat. And once you got people past that to say, well, what can we do differently now that we have AI that we couldn't do before? And that's been a fun exploration, and I think that's what really set me on the
Yeah.
next step of, okay, let's see what can we do better because of this, not just how do we work minimize.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious where that took you. So as you were
Mhm.
going down this road, what have you identified you could do?
So I now teach prompt engineering on day 2 in my classroom, and I flipped it to tell students, you better use AI for every single thing you can in the classroom to learn, unless I tell you not to. And if I tell you not to, you should ask, why shouldn't we do this? And I need to justify why you shouldn't. And I've loved that approach because the students understand. I say, well, as a professional, you need to be able to speak in front of someone and you can't just type it in and get an answer and read it. So you
Mhm.
have to have it memorized. And they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. I need to know that as a professional. And so that's the traditional education. But then you start thinking about the cool new things. I've hired a team of students, and we can build stuff that never before you thought you could build with students, just because of
Yeah.
their level of experience. And so the ability to do has just is off the charts what we can now make.
That's what's always impressed. What's impressed me most about AI is the iteration speed that it grants you. Um, it it always shocks me at how correct AI will get things on the first try. Even now, after 2 years of using it, um, it's a delight every time. I'd be curious. Have you experimented or looked into at all any of like the AI agent architectures, and whether or not that represents like a significant step change for accounting purposes and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we're just starting to play with that. We've got a couple different things we're trying to do from a research perspective with that. I haven't figured it out. That's for sure. It's complex and it's weird, and it doesn't just function like computer programming. You type it A, B, and
Right.
then it
Yeah.
produces C. And so that's the process we're doing. I'll give you one from a research perspective we're trying to do. Can
Hmm.
we do a multi-agent tool that will read an academic research article, which is dense and boring, and repackage it so that a professional could read and understand and get the important things out of it? And we've had some initial success in programming that so that we can take something that's super highly complex and written for one audience, click a button, and it will repackage it for somebody else. And multi-agent has done a lot better than just the traditional put it into Claude or Gemini and have it spit out something else. So that's one place that we've started playing with.
It's interesting. Do you have any theories about why that is so far? Is that just because, you have the agents prompted to look for different things, or do you believe that it's just, kind of like a breadth, um, essentially a breadth problem? You
Yeah.
have more minds on the topic.
Yeah, I think that's some of it. I mean, AI is trained to kind of act like a human, and one human can do something well. Two humans usually do it better, and there's got to be a diminishing law of returns that once you have 50 agents working, it's going to just completely go kaput.
Yeah.
But when you have one just focusing on one task, just like with students and professionals, your job is to read and summarize this article. Your job is to do copy edit. Your job is to do, come up with cool examples. It seems to work better to specialize,
Mhm.
which is the Industrial Revolution. I mean,
Right.
specialization is what kicked off a lot of what we have. And so it's not surprising that technology trained to act like humans behaves like humans. When we get a couple of them together, they think better.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'll be intrigued to see the as that becomes more and more popular, how tools change.
Yeah.
Because I know I use all the time, I'll plug in an article if I don't have time to read it and say, you know, ChatGPT, please just one paragraph, 3 bullet points, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But there have been times where I've gone back and read the article. I'm like, oh man, that missed so much. I'm like, that was not accurate at all. And I posted about it on Twitter, like, and you just feel so dumb. Um, so I am excited to see that more popularized because I think there's a lot of value there.
Hmm.
And especially with a lot of these founders, because the biggest, what seems to me now at this point, a lot of people have accepted that AI is here to stay for the most part. You have
Yeah.
some lingering doubters. But now it's a lot of the concern with accuracy, misinformation, hallucination. And I think this could be one of the routes to help decrease that concern,
Yeah.
it seems like.
I think the other one, and this is where we'll get to talking about the company we've started, is education of what they're good at and what they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mhm.
like any tool, you can misuse a computer. It's not for hammering in a nail. It's not very good at that. But once we figure out where does AI apply well and where does it not, and eventually maybe we'll figure out how to apply it there. But it's not the tool to just get a specific right answer. It's much more to co-create and work together to generate something.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is we need education to help people see where we're currently at, so people can get up to speed and know how to use it right.
Mhm. I still find it shocking how early we are still on all of this. Like because it's consumed my entire world. Like every waking thought for the past 2 years pretty much has been about this. But then I read the studies where it's like only a third of Americans have heard of ChatGPT or stuff like that, and it's mind boggling to me because once again, like this has consumed my world, and thus by extension, it's consumed the world of a lot of people around me because I'm like, hey, have you heard about this? You need to use this.
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
scared with Thanksgiving in a couple days going to talk, because I start talking AI and everyone's like, okay, not again. That's all he ever talks about. But to me, it becomes your world.
Totally. Yeah, we're all in the same boat. So, Professor Wood, I'm curious, you mentioned the company you started, which is called Skillabite, right? I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Skillabite, is this, what's the story behind
Mhm.
identifying this? Because I'm sure you had so many ideas with what you could do with AI. So what was it that got you here?
Yeah, so this actually, Ernst & Young, the EY, the huge accounting firm, they have a nonprofit called the EY Foundation that they give money to, and the foundation pays to do all sorts of humanitarian efforts. One of the big things that they do is pay professors to produce new content they give out for free. And I've worked for them for years to generate, cutting edge. You mentioned RPA and data analytics and all of these content. And they came to me and said, hey, could we help you do stuff with AI? And I said, sure, hire me a team of students. And so they gave us a large grant here at BYU, and we hired 12 students to work part-time to generate new materials to teach this stuff. Because faculty, it's hard to stay caught up with so many things moving so fast. Well, the first thing we did with this team of students was say, we need a platform to present this material. We couldn't find a good one out there, so we decided to build our own. So in 7 months, with 12 part-time students, because we use AI in everything we do, we built an entire learning management platform and 17 case studies to get students started on this.
Wow.
We launched 2 weeks before the semester started and already have had 3,500 students use it and complete like 12,000 assignments. And I stress, 12 part-time students did that.
Yeah.
Which to me is remarkable. So as I was building that, and that's all non-for-profit, I thought, wow, that's students. Everybody needs to learn about this. We need to build something for professionals. Similar type training content. They need to learn what is prompt engineering, what is generative AI governance, all of these topics. And so we said, we can build the same thing. And so that's where the idea came from, is there a huge need from students to say professionals need it as well. So
Yeah.
we built an entire platform, and then we're starting to release cases. We're still new to the CPE and providing that. So we don't have a lot of content yet, but we've now built the platform so we can ramp up and start producing it. But then I noticed one more thing. If you've done CPE training, continuing professional education, usually it's pretty boring.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. And a lot of people do it as a compliance exercise. If you're an accountant, you have to do 40 hours, check the box, and you just kind of check the box. And I thought, why can't we turn it into a competitive advantage? And so what we've done is we've taken the cutting edge, best way to teach that we use in the universities and say, can we apply that to the real world learning? And so it isn't just reading about prompt engineering. It's actually doing prompt engineering and then getting feedback on what you did well and what you didn't. Or one of the very first cases, this is about auditing. Did either of you do auditing back in the day?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. How did you learn how to interview people for an audit?
A list.
Yeah.
Give a list of questions.
Yeah, you read a list of questions and maybe they say, well, watch somebody. You did never really get to practice it. And because of that, a lot of people are scared, new auditors, to go and talk to a client because what am I supposed to do? And we don't teach it. We have them read a list because it's really hard to simulate when I have 100 students to do one-on-one interviews. So we built a case where the student interviews an AI that has a personality as a client. And they interview them, and then on the very next screen, it gives them detailed feedback on how well their interview went, what they could improve, what they did well, what they struggled, and that sort of thing. So it's a whole new way of teaching because of AI.
Wow.
That's really interesting because there are a few other people doing very similar things in different fields, but like it's interesting to see how many of these approaches are kind of proliferating and appearing all from different people. And that's another thing that's so exciting about AI to me is like you have so many different. It's kind of like a Cambrian explosion of intelligence in a lot of ways, right? Like you have so many people going in just slightly different but roughly parallel directions, and you just figure like it's got to lead somewhere exciting because that's where knowledge creation goes.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. It's early days. You're going to see a lot of different people, and eventually there'll be consolidation. These similar ones come together, and there starts to see some definitive paths. But right now, it's the wild, wild west of everybody's exploring and seeing what does this new continent look like and just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, building Skillabite, because obviously this is a company. So how many
Yep.
team members are there with this, or is it just you at this point?
Right now it's me and one former student who we're building it together. And then I've got others. We're starting to branch out. We've got the platform working now. We've got the first cases, but now it'll be finding other content creators and working with them to get their materials out there. Because there's a lot
Got
of
it.
really bright minds, especially academics who've thought about teaching a lot, who I think could offer a lot to the profession and professionals on how to teach them.
Hmm.
And we're doing another cool way. So we created a full-on video game for teaching inventory auditing, for example.
Love
So
it.
rather than just reading a boring book, it's the same engines that, do top of the line video games. You actually go into a warehouse and are opening up boxes and investigating and doing those types of things that make it engaging and that where you
Yeah.
really learn rather than just kind of Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 wah.
Yep. Totally. That's very exciting because I feel like there's been a huge, particularly early on, either very early on in college or early on in your career, there's so much knowledge thrown at you, like memorize this, know this. And there's always been a huge disconnect. I know there was for me of the knowledge you have and the real world application. And I feel like AI, being able to build these AI personas, things like this, it feels like it's finally marrying the two of those, which I think is incredibly exciting. That I just think of what time could be saved for me in my career if I had been able to, an inventory count, for example. I had one that just, I was so stressed. I had no idea what I was doing. It was painful. But if I had actually been able to run through an example, that would have been so helpful.
Well, in the best education, you see it with MBA programs. You graduate with your undergrad, you go out and get real world experience, then you come back and get education again because that scaffolding really helps. And if we can simulate that so that a student learns something, then they can see it in the real world or a simulated real world, they can come back and learn better. And then
Hmm.
back and forth. And I think it will be mutually reinforcing so that then they come out really knowing and feeling confident that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Another really exciting thing to me about AI in this field specifically is the eventual collision of AI and like VR or XR, right?
Hmm.
So you can imagine like the warehouse example you brought up, like could be even further enhanced with it. Excuse me, with VR, right? Like it's just like as you said, it's the wild wild west out here. We're mapping out the new continent, and there's some really exciting landmarks out there.
Yeah.
Spencer, I wonder if you've been reading my emails. We've been experimenting with that. We haven't gone too far down the VR route because you have to have the headset.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just limitations from an educational perspective of everybody has to have some cool, new gizmo,
Right.
and it makes it harder to get to. But we have started playing around with that, researching it in early stages of testing it. But I think you're exactly right. How do we build real world simulations and experiences so people can learn better and faster?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm curious. Okay, so there's Skillabite, which you're addressing this need of
Mhm.
knowledge, right? Anyway, this need of knowledge, and you said you were just thinking so much of what you could address. What other needs? I know you're working on another project.
Yeah.
I'm curious the background there.
Yeah, so you invited me to talk about one company, and just this morning we got our LLC back for a second company. So we've now formed another one.
The wild, wild
Um,
west.
exactly. Well, and they're just cool things to explore. That's the thing I like. So the second idea is we started looking at the accounting process and started to say, eventually a lot of this is going to be automated. I don't think you can see it. Maybe I'll move my camera up. Up here, this big, huge book up in the back is a general ledger from 1898, and you open it up and it's big beautiful book and there's this detailed handwriting, and we've automated almost all of that accounting away. Nobody sits and adds up the columns and rows and does the same
Hmm.
stuff. We're on this journey of automation. So we sat down and said, let's look at the auditing process from end to end. And we started research projects in different places, and we're testing a lot of that, and that's probably more boring than you want to talk in the podcast. But one place we saw there's a huge amount of inefficiency where we think AI could help is in work paper reviews. So think about the process. a staff auditor goes and prepares some documentation of something that happened. And then they pass it up the line and someone else reviews it, and then someone else reviews that, and somebody else reviews that, and they send it back and they fix it. And you just go through this iterative process again and again and
Yep.
again in a lot of time. And I started thinking about Japanese manufacturing. You know, back in the day when the US, they try to fix the problem, oh, let's, kind of like this review process. And the Japanese said, well, let's go back and fix it at the beginning. And
Mhm.
let's actually make this product right so we don't have to do all of these continual review processes. And we said, what if we did AI did the same thing? And so we take a work paper, when the staff finishes it, they click one button and it automatically performs a review and gives them the feedback that they can then fix before they ever send it up the chain. So the idea is a staff person hopefully can fix most of the errors before the manager reviews it. We'll still have a manager look at it, but what if we could save 20 to 50% of their time on every single work paper? Managers are not inexpensive. They bill at a very high rate. If you could save that amount of time and redeploy it, you've suddenly made a huge difference in the economies of scale of an audit.
Wow. I was curious, and you answered it, but because I know a lot of the review is to catch mistakes, but it's also right to coach those who are the associates, things like that. So the AI, you said, they don't just hit submit, it reviews it before it goes to the manager. It gives the associate feedback. Is that right? And says, hey, these things are wrong. Okay.
Yeah, for our viewers that are going to watch this on YouTube, I'll share my screen to show just a little bit of what it looks like. And I'll try to describe it for those who are just going to be listening in. Can you see the screen okay?
Yep.
So you have a traditional work paper in Excel. There's multiple different sheets or tabs that are across. So here's a lead sheet. There's a testing table that has the actual testing that goes on. And this is just a dummy work paper. Well, once the staff has done that work, what we've created is an Excel add-in that they just click run, and then you can say, what do you want to review? Do you want to look for accountability? Do you want to look for professional skepticism? Look at the formulas, the language and tone. I'll just select one of these. I'll say formulas. And now the AI goes in and it examines every single formula in the entire workbook and says, here's some feedback. And you probably can't see, the screen's a little bit small, but it gives you a timestamp and it says, hey, here's where you list inflation and labor costs twice with different values. That doesn't make sense. And it kind of tells you, here's where it is over on your testing in C5 and C7. And sure enough, we should have labeled it something different. We labeled it wrong. So now the staff gets the feedback of, here's where I made my mistakes. Low stakes area, because it's not the manager writing back and say, hey, dumb, go fix this. But they see it themselves. They can categorize what they did to fix it. And in another iteration, what we'll eventually do is collect these and give them detailed feedback on consistent errors we see across work. So you can say, hey, Jacob, here's your plan of what you have to do to improve in the future. So a kind of a customized training platform. Maybe these two different ideas will meld. So we'll have customized training on Skillabite and then this tool.
I see.
Yeah. And you can run it as many times as you want. So even a manager, when they're done doing a work paper, click a quick button and see if there's an error. And just have a second set of eyes really quickly look at it. And it's really pretty good. I mean, it picks up that you have hard-coded values in that weren't justified, that the conclusions don't match up. A number of those types of things to really bring it to life and help improve quality and efficiency. So it's not an either or. And that's the cool thing of AI. You can be both higher quality and faster.
So I have a couple questions. First, and this one, I think I know the answer already, but I think I think questions like this are really good to ask because it illustrates kind of the product development process for AI. What was the decision behind making it like an Excel extension rather than its own application?
Good. Two things here. So first off, many work papers in accounting are done in Excel. And so take it back to where you're actually doing the work rather than add another step in the process of now you have to upload it. Now you're worried about all these other things and that process. Put it back where the user's using it. And second, training. People are comfortable with Excel. The professionals who use this, they're used to running things like this. And so it becomes very easy. I mean, training is going to be click this button, and then just do your normal work. It's just an AI giving you feedback rather than, your Spencer, my manager, is telling me what I need to fix. So I think those were the two biggest ones. And well, actually, I'll say a third one. A third one is the speed with which we can build and try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, okay, we're back to the drawing board and we can try something else.
Awesome. Yeah, I love asking questions like that just because I love hearing answers like that. I think that these little product development questions are so much more important than people give them credit for as we move into the world of AI-enabled software. One of my biggest gripes with the current, kind of wave of technology is smart TVs. Hate smart TVs. Because I think that embedding, a whole UI framework into a TV processor is just a bad product decision. And I've seen a lot of bad AI product decisions, so I love when I see good ones. The second question is, have you ever had any concerns with this tool in regards to abuse by managers, essentially? So either managers using it as an excuse to not give proper attention to their associate. And I'm speaking from not too much knowledge of the accounting industry, just basically what Jake has told me. So is there ever...
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
So are there concerns about, managers misusing this or using it to abuse their reports or anything like that?
Good. Now, I'm a professor, so I'm not going to actually answer your question. I'm going to answer it by answering a different question.
Perfect.
So I'll try to answer it. I think we see oftentimes people holding AI to a higher level of higher requirements than humans. So you think of driverless cars. Oh, humans crash at X%. Well, AI has to be perfect before we're going to let people use driverless cars. And that's a fallacy, because if it's better than a human, we should use it. So
Right.
Coming back to your question, will managers shirk their work and just, click through and say, okay, AI did it, so I don't have to look at it? Yeah, some will. Absolutely. Do managers do that right now? Yes, absolutely. And they're like,
Right.
it's busy season. I've got too much work. I'm tired. I'm just going to pass it on. So I don't think the question is, will they do it? It's, will they do it more because there's an AI tool than they would have without the AI tool? That's a great question. I'd love if a listener wants to test that one out, contact me, and David Wood at byu.edu, and I'd be happy to share it with you, and we can explore that. But I think human nature is, we're going to have to fight that, whether it's done with AI or it's not. It's the same basic principle.
That's exactly what I was hoping to hear.
You didn't see
Because
this question either. You didn't tell me before, so that is my honest opinion.
No, it's true. It's true. I sprung that one hoping to trap you into something like that, because this is exactly why we have this podcast. Is like, we want to talk about how exactly what you touched on, that people hold AI to a higher standard. Like, for example, like when it comes to hallucinations are obviously a problem to solve. But also at the same time, like, it's a problem to solve in humans as well.
Big time.
I can't tell you how many times I've thought I replied to a text that Jake sent me, and then an hour later I look back and I'm like, oh no, I never, 2 days later I look back and I never replied, right? And so I love when guests touch on that point, because it's just it's one of those soapboxes that I've climbed on, and I'm going to keep shouting until people hear me that AI is essentially a mirror to humanity, like a really weird digital mirror, right?
And I think with this specific one, I'm going to interject here a little bit.
Yeah.
The reason we picked this process is because it was a human process, and we're not taking all of the human out. We're just taking some of it out and leaving the human there. And I think that's
exactly
important. I don't think generative AI, I haven't seen many situations yet where full automation works. But there still is this co-working relationship as we still figure out how to get these models to behave, how we want them to. So this setting works really, really well for that. And it's not just auditing, it's tax. We've got that almost built out. We'll have that built out this week. But then also just a general review of Excel workbooks. We've done some initial testing. And so imagine whatever workbook you're doing, you click a button, it says, hey, take a second look at this. That doesn't look normal. Fix this. Consider this. Yeah. And I think that's the real power of AI right now, is it's just a second set of really, really smart eyes to save you from really looking stupid.
I love that.
Totally. I totally agree.
I need it like in my ear, so then I'm talking to my kids and my wife and others, and it's like, no, don't say that yet. Think first.
Yeah, exactly. Someday. Yeah, I think GitHub and Microsoft nailed it with the Copilot name. I think that really does embody so much of where AI really thrives right now in the world. Someday maybe we'll have humanoid robots doing things, but I think we're a ways away from that still. So I'm really curious because you have all of this experience both with students and now professionals. What's the biggest area that people are lacking related as far as knowledge? So let me back up. What AI knowledge is most lacking that you've observed?
Well, there are 4 courses on skillabite.com. No.
Perfect. We'll drop the link.
Everybody should $9.99 just this weekend. No. I think there's a couple things. AI is different than other learning in the sense that it is more experiential and experience based. I can't do a training where you say, hey, Jacob and Spencer, do A, B, and C, and here's your output. It's not just teaching arithmetic because it changes. That's the genius and the drawback of it. So number one, I think people need just practice and experience. They need to learn the basics. That's why we built the company, another plug. But once you learn those basics, I tell people when I go out and do consulting and talking to companies, the very best thing you can do is get 5 people to agree every week we're going to do one thing with AI. And on Friday, we'll go to lunch and we'll all share. And then the next week, we'll do 5 more things and 5 more things. After 1 or 2 months, you will have a list of use cases of things that work and things that don't, and you will be very, very good at it. And it's that basic of getting in and trying it. And then people seem to get it real quick. Once they've spent a week on it, they're like, oh yeah. How did I live without this?
Oh, you're preaching to the choir. We say this all the time. Like just like this week, just
every single
something.
week.
Like have
just
it make you tell it what's in your fridge and it'll create a recipe for it, like just anything. Just try it and it becomes very intuitive.
And so part of it, we need to motivate people and just to get in and try it. And so you can do, off sites where you take a group of people and you have them try it or bring in people to speak. And I've done that to get them to try it. The second piece I'd say, in addition to motivation, is start following the thought leaders. So they're listening to your podcast. There's other people on LinkedIn, and start following some of those people to see how they're using it. Because there's this big fallacy of, let me sit on AI and I'm going to wait until the hype dies down and we'll see the real products in, 1, 3, 5 years, and then I'll start working on it. That's not how this works. If you get in early and figure it out, then you'll be able to be brought along. Otherwise, I think there's going to be a big chasm that you don't understand, and suddenly it's moved so far, it's going to take a lot of time to catch up. So starting the race and just keeping up with everybody else is going to be a lot easier than saying, okay, everybody's on mile 13 and I'm going to start the marathon now.
That's very, very true. Because I find even if I because I don't pay as much attention to like the image generation space, for example. And so even now, like I'm pretty hopelessly behind on a lot of like the latest, even just basic prompting techniques for a lot of the image models. And I keep yelling at people, and not literally, obviously, but in my personal life and online, they're like, yo, you guys need to be trying this stuff out right now. This is learning to Google back in 2002 or whatever, right? Like these are fundamental skills that you're building that will continue to serve you for years, and these skills will only appreciate in value as these models get better and better. And that's something I think people underappreciate.
I was training a bunch of heads of companies, and so they were talking. Okay, so we're excited about doing this. Who do we train? Should we start with the C-suite? I said no. Go down to the very bottom grassroots level and train them first, because you'll get a lot of smart people who see the real problems, and then it will build up, and you'll here's all the ways we're improving things. And I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing with professors. Don't train the professors. Get it in the students' hands and have them teach the professors, because it's so easy to use. And once you start trying it, you'll be like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can try that. Let me try this. Let me try that. So you just have to free the innovation and let people have a space to try it, rather than, okay, we're going to treat this like traditional IT and it's going to be a top-down approach.
Right. Oh, there's just so many directions I want to go. So many questions I have right now. Maybe a slight pivot. Okay, so actually first to summarize, there's Skillabite, education, Hidden Hawk AI.
Yep. We don't even have the website for that one, but if you have interest in that one, send me an email. I'm happy to share more, but yeah, we're still working on building this out as fast as we possibly can. Hopefully by the end of the year, we have something ready for people to start using.
Perfect. and we'll drop links when they become available. We can drop
Great, thank you.
Skillabite for sure. Um, so Professor Wood, I'm curious if we back up to academia at large, I'm
Mhm.
curious the effect you've seen of AI on particularly professors as far as research and publishing papers.
I'm kind of surprised. There's two reactions. So I've done trainings now throughout the world. This last year, given a ton of presentations. Academics are the most interesting group because I would have expected them to be, embracing this. This is the future. How do we do it? But there's a lot of hesitancy. A lot of people saying, well, wait, I didn't do it that way. Everybody has to learn it this way. So I see a few people that are sprinting out, going as fast as they can, but a lot of academics are kind of taking a more cautious approach. Let's stand back and watch what happens.
Hmm.
Um, so I gave a presentation very early here at BYU, and it was kind of funny. All the faculty came back up to the 5th floor. All the senior faculty went and checked their retirement portfolios, and all the young faculty went and subscribed to ChatGPT. But I do think it's getting past that. It's not scary. You need to try it. It's warming up. So I'm starting to do more trainings of faculty of how they can use this. And once they see, oh wait, I can do that. I didn't want to spend all that time preparing that material or customizing it or coming up with those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're like, oh, I'm all on board because it makes my life a lot easier and better.
Interesting.
It's interesting how often that pattern repeats itself too.
Yeah.
The number of people I've seen, even online, like slowly become, not all of them have become complete AI enthusiasts, but they've become less skeptical as they've seen, the material results.
Well, Spencer, let me just brings up something you might find interesting. I
Yeah,
found one of the big things people are hesitant, faculty especially, is they feel it's quote unquote cheating,
yeah,
that it's too easy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I think once we get people beyond that to say, okay, proofreading now is too easy, but the thought of what I should say is harder. And so it's not shifting the amount of work I do. It's just changing. I have to spend really good time thinking of what's important and less time in polishing up to write it. And I think that's the key. We have to get people beyond this idea that AI is somehow cheating. It's
Yeah.
just a new way of doing things and a better way of doing a lot of things.
I love that.
Yeah. It just increases higher level thinking. It really does. It allows you to think at a higher level.
It can. Now, there are groups, and I want to make sure I bring this out. There's a lot of people who use it in bad ways. Let me just put in the
Mm-hmm.
essay and click and be done. So it's not, if you're using it to avoid work, that's bad. If you're
Mm-hmm.
using it to improve your work and to do new and better things, that's the right way. And that's where I'm struggling as a teacher, is trying to motivate students to want to use it the right way and not just use it for work minimization and using it in dumb ways.
Hmm. I was going to ask
Go
a
ahead,
question.
Dave.
I'm
Go
curious
ahead.
with students, how do you deal with that? I mean, what does cheating look like? Like,
Mhm.
how do you confront those issues from students at this point?
So I use very clear expectations up front. I tell them, kind of like a stoplight, you should use red or green. This assignment, you cannot use it. And like I explained, I tell them why. You need to memorize this because we're going to do a closed note exam, because this is stuff you have to have memorized to be a professional. But then what I'm doing on the other projects is I'm saying, now this is stuff you need to be able to do, not just know, but do. I expect really amazing things. Use AI, work as teams, do everything you can, but I better expect to see something that I never would have expected a student perform before, because now you can use it to program, you can use it to
Mm-hmm.
design websites, you can create your images, you can create cool text, you can write it in unique ways, you can be creative and brainstorm. So knowing and doing, I've separated into two buckets, and I teach them differently, and I require the students to do them differently.
Interesting. And have you seen a higher quality deliverables from
Oh,
students?
absolutely. The knowing is kind of the same. It's hard to learn, and people have to work on that. That's about the same test exam averages. But on the doing things, I mean, I mentioned the whole building a whole new website.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give you a whole bunch of other examples of students doing projects where they're like, hey, I want to design this. And it's like, you can prototype it out. You don't just have to write,
Yeah,
2 pages about it. Give me a deliverable that actually shows it working, and they can.
that's
So
cool.
that's the cool thing. I think we're going to see an explosion of entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many things you can try and build. And it's like, well, that didn't work. This one did. Okay, let me run with it and develop that out.
Wow. I was
I
gonna.
went into want. I've silenced you both modes, but I was talking to you.
I just have too many questions. Um, when you, I'm curious what you are afraid of with AI. What are some things you're nervous about, or things you would caution people about, either now or in the future, where you see it going?
So I'm a big enthusiast, but one of the second or third research projects we did was a governance framework around all the risks. So if you go to genai.global, there's a free framework you can download that organizations can look through and say, here's all the potential problems in an easy, digestible manner, and build a frame and do that. So there are a lot of risks. I think a couple of the biggest risks are, one, people using it to just not do anything of value. They're using it to work minimize. And we've talked a little bit about that. I think nefarious purposes, people are going to use it. There's some really evil, bad things that are done in the world with generative AI, and it's enabled that to be done at a scale and a speed that nobody in society wants. So we do have some definite problems there. We need to rethink some serious regulations. I don't know how you apply copyright law and all of those sticky issues. There needs to be some way to reward original creators, but what was envisioned never even thought of AI in this world of generative AI. So I think we need some real serious thought. And
Mm-hmm.
given the political climate of division, it's going to be real hard to come together to think of how do we do some of these really important big things to prevent some of those problems.
The copyright one is one that I've been another one that
Yeah.
I've been beating the drum and standing on my soapbox about for ever since ChatGPT came out. Like the second I started using it, like this means it just immediately occurred to me, like this means like copyright law is effectively dead already, and everybody's just catching up to that now. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out, because obviously there are some cases of AI training that I think are pretty clear copyright violations.
Yeah.
I won't name any names, but there are some certain platforms out there.
Yeah.
But then you look at something like ChatGPT or Claude, and it's just like, first, how would you determine that a copyright violation has occurred? Second, how would you assign damages? Third, like how do you argue that it's not fair use? Like there's just so many levels to it that we need
Yeah.
a new regime. And yeah, to your point, I'm pretty pessimistic about that happening. Hopeful,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
And I think we're at this really interesting point. It's like when the internet first came out, it was this new thing. We didn't have the laws and regulations and the thinking all around it. It was emerging and growing. We're at the same point with AI. We'll look back in a couple of years and be like, oh, those questions, we figured them out.
Mm-hmm.
But right now it's in this messy middle stage of what do we do? What do we not do? What should we do?
Right.
And all of that. And I think I'm like you said, I'm confident that it will be worked out, but it's going to be a bit painful, and there'll be some people that are hurt along that way. So how we can best get to some type of agreement of what's appropriate and not, I think it would be awesome. More minds, more people sharing and figuring that out together.
Totally
I
agree.
think one really encouraging development on that front to me has been a lot of the deals that OpenAI is striking with major journalist organizations, etc. Because even if you can't really necessarily apply copyright law, and that's still unsettled, right? Like maybe maybe the courts will disagree with me, but so far it's been determined that you can't really apply copyright law to these cases. But I still think that it's incredibly important for these companies to at least make good faith efforts toward paying organizations and artists, etc., that are significant contributors.
Well,
And that's an unpopular view among many of my fellow AI enthusiasts. When I express that view, there's a lot of them that get mad at me, but it's one that I stand by.
Well, there needs to be balance in the history of the world. You can see it, balance between labor and then balance between the thinking class and the working class, and all of these different groups. This has just shifted, and we haven't settled on how do we do that. How do we pay the people who come up with the creative, unique ideas, but then someone else who builds it? And I think we'll get there. And there's lots of different ideas out there, but you're exactly right. We have to reward people for good work that moves things forward, but we can't stifle the technology that's advancing as well.
Yeah.
It's
I'm excited. I'll tell you the one I wish
yeah.
I could invent with all this video stuff. I can't imagine. I think my grandkids will come home from school and say, I want to watch a video about Darth Vader as a rom-com with this other actor and all of that. And it will create it for them. And somehow we'll figure out the monetization that Disney gets, 25 cents for this, and someone else gets this, and someone else gets this.
Totally.
But when we get to that world, it'll be just like digital photography. Digital photography didn't kill film. It killed film while making photography approachable to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big point for me is AI takes skills that were reserved for a special group, and everyone can be a computer programmer. Everyone can be a producer. Everyone can do all of these other things. And we unlock that ability across humanity. And we're going to see explosions in all of these cool new things because people now can do it because it's easier. It's brought down to their level of just describing it, and it makes it for you.
And it forces people with those skills to reach higher and higher. So for me with programming, I was mostly like a web developer by trade, but now, now that a lot of web development has honestly been automated, like I've been reaching further and further into, machine learning and systems engineering and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a challenge, and it's been rough at times, but it's also been like, it's been incredible. And it's just, it's enhanced my life enormously and enormously enhanced my earning potential. So
people love learning. Go look at little kids. They love learning. AI, if used appropriately, is the greatest learning tool that we've seen because you can learn in so many cool ways and explore and invent and create. And I think there's something human about that. And to me, that's what will be cool. If we can use AI to unlock that creative, exciting learning potential rather than just turn us into soulless robots, then we'll have been successful.
Yeah, it really is like having this your life co-pilot, someone who can go through and teach you everything that you want to know. And there's no longer there's a time and a place, right, for sitting in a lecture hall. But I think everyone agrees the real learning always takes place outside of the lecture. It takes place in the homework where you're doing it yourself and you're figuring it out and you're looking things up for yourself. And now all of it is just accelerated. I think that's a big theme we're seeing is just an acceleration of existing processes and the trimming of extraneous fat that nobody wants to do anyway.
I think education is going to increasingly become about motivating. So you come to listen to me, so I motivate you to want to learn and do and give you some structure, and then you go figure out how to do it and teach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to that end, that excites me because then you are going to be better, I'm going to be better, and what we produce will be better. So maybe we'll see. That's the fun part. It's a grand experiment in the world.
I've seen some AI videos on TikTok of it'll be like AI generated Joe Biden and Donald Trump discussing like, Euler's theorem, stuff like that. And it's, it's all memes and jokes right now, but also at the same time, I think at the heart of it, like there is actually, a new kind of a teaching method developing, right? Where it's like, why not learn calculus from Bugs Bunny? You can do it now. If that helps you learn it, go learn it from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, totally. Well, Professor Wood, we're very grateful for you coming on with us today. As we wrap things up, I'm curious what advice, because I'm sure you've given a lot of advice to a lot of people about AI, but for someone who is nervous about AI, they think it could take their job, whatever it is, what advice would you give to these people?
Well, if you're nervous about it, that's a good sign because that shows that you care and you want to improve. And rather than taking that nervousness and letting it turn into fear and paralysis, take it to motivate you to take a step to learn and improve. If you're learning and improving, you'll evolve and there will be something on the other side. Just because you can't see what it is doesn't mean it's not there. And so I'm a big man of faith. I think that's the definition of faith is you believe that the future will be better. And if you're learning and progressing and trying, the future is going to be better. If you stick your head in the sand and pretend this doesn't exist, you're in trouble. There is going to be a lot of change in the world, and the pace of change is going to accelerate. So if you can be comfortable with trying new things and the joy of learning, then you'll be okay on the other side. So that would be my biggest advice is try it. Experiment with it. See how it can make your life better, and then how you can make other people's lives better because of all this cool new ability that you have.
I love that.
Love it. That's perfect.
It's fascinating how often we hear basically that exact same thing. Like, just go try it out, and you can use it to enhance your own life. You can use it to enhance your friends' lives. Um, I I've done both as well. Like, it's been incredible. Um, David, before we let you go, is there anywhere that if our followers are wanting to, connect with you or learn more about you, follow what you're up to, what's the best place to do that?
Good. So number one would be LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of David Woods. I'm the David Wood. I'm one of the David Woods at BYU. I'm the accounting professor at BYU, David Wood.
Yeah.
You can email me, davidwood@byu.edu. I'm happy to reach out and share what I know. Obviously, you'll drop the links for the companies
Yeah.
that we're trying to start and seeing if those can make a difference in the world. But those are the best places to reach me.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Phil, thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
having me.
coming on.
It's fun to talk to people about this and just share opinions. I think that's a big part of what we need to do is talk and learn together.
Yep.
We agree completely. Yeah.
100% agree. Thanks, Professor Wood.